Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 401 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, I'm incredibly excited to tell you that Alisa Weilerstein is on the program. Now, there are two cellists in the world whose work touches me very deeply. Yo-Yo Ma and Alisa. So imagine my surprise when one day, going over social media, something popped up in front of me that made me think, does Alisa Weilerstein have diabetes? And she does. Alisa was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 28 years ago when she was just about 10 years old. So she's here today to talk about that and also to indulge me as I ask questions about the cello. Now, I know that a lot of you might not be classical music fans, but I implore you, spend the next hour finding out what I love about the cello, and you might just love it too. Plus, you'll hear about some type 1 diabetes stuff. I'm tricking you into learning about the cello, but it's not really much of a trick if I'm telling you. During this episode, you're going to hear cuts from Alisa's newest album, Bach Cello Suites. Many thanks to her record label, Pentatone, for allowing me to use some of the music. You can find out all about Alisa on her website, alisaweilerstein.com. You can see her upcoming schedule, a little biography, and of course, all of her albums right there in one place, with convenient links to Amazon, Apple, and Spotify. Before we start, please don't forget to check out t1dexchange.org/juicebox. T1D Exchange is doing amazing things for people with type 1 diabetes by collecting data that helps people make better decisions about type 1. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You need to be a U.S. resident with type 1 diabetes or the parent of someone with type 1 diabetes from the United States. It takes less than 10 minutes to become part of the registry, adding your answers to their very simple and straightforward questions. The data they get from you goes on to help make decisions like setting A1C standards, whether or not people get test strips from their insurance, and if Medicare covers things like Dexcom. You really will be helping other people who are living with type 1 diabetes when you visit t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Join the registry today. Okay, you ready? This is Alisa. I'm so excited. I have a podcast that is now 400 episodes old, all about type 1 diabetes. And I have been for the last, since the royal wedding, I guess, I've had it in my head that I could actually get a type 1 who played the cello, because cello is my. If you told me you were going to lock me in a dark room for the rest of days and I could take one thing with me, I would take some unaccompanied cello piece with me.
You have good taste.
Thank you.
That's good.
And I have no background in it whatsoever. I'm an absolute novice. I only know how I feel when I hear it. I can only tell you that a couple of years ago when Yo-Yo Ma said he was going to be touring his last album, I drove from the middle of New Jersey to Washington, D.C. to hear him play.
Nice.
And I sat about 8 rows from him at the cathedral, and it was really amazing. And while my wife sat next to me, I think enjoying it, and at the same time wondering how, because it seems incongruous, my whole personality and the fact that this is what I don't think they fit together very well.
Interesting. That's great.
I really love it. So I want to hear a little bit about when you were diagnosed with type 1. How long ago was it?
It was 28 and a half years ago. I am 38 now, and it was the month before my 10th birthday.
Okay.
So
I was going to say when you were 10, but I didn't want to creep you out by proving that I knew how old you were.
That's quite all right. Good that you do your homework. It's all right.
No, it's not just that. So I was following you on Instagram before I recognized that you had diabetes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one day you did something on Instagram that made me go, oh my God, does that girl have type 1? I was like, because if she does, I'm getting her on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not embarrassed at all, by the way. The people listening who probably would never imagine this about me, but I don't know why it's such an odd thing to some people, but we'll get into all this at some point. So you're 10 years old. Was there any type 1 in your family or other endocrine issues?
Not that we knew of. My mother said that her grandmother died when she was fairly young, so she wasn't fully aware, but that there was some diabetes there. She thought it was type 2, actually, which, of course, as we know, has no real genetic link to type 1.
Yeah.
But many years later, my first cousin came down with it, and she was 23. So there's definitely on my mother's side of the family, there's some sort of genetic thing going on.
I like how you said came down with it. I felt
yes,
I like
came down with it.
That's good phrasing. It's like you caught a cold. Okay. 20 years ago is
28 years ago.
28 years ago. 1990-ish in the middle.
1992. Yeah, it was actually the year I remember well because it was the year that the DCCT trials came out with a definitive statement that said that tight control could greatly reduce the risk of complications. And so it was a very kind of, I mean, if one had to be diagnosed with it, it was a very sort of hopeful time. And so that was something that my doctors really made sure that my parents understood and that I understood also. And it was kind of motivation to really keep a good eye on the blood sugar.
Well, even just a few years prior to that, the disease was all about just do your best and let's see how long you can make it, you know?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And so my mom told me actually many years later that, I mean, we had a lot of doctor friends and I was already pretty serious about the cello. And then, you know, there was a very, very insensitive doctor friend who said to my parents, well, you know, you can forget about the cello. She's going to have neuropathy in her fingers when she's 25 and she won't be able to play.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't listen to them.
Not very nice.
Let me say, I'm glad you didn't listen to them because so there's going to be a lot of moments where I'm going to ask you to correct me during this if you hear anything that I say that's wrong. But I hear cello playing from artist to artist, and to me, it feels. I used to think of it as like more masculine or feminine, like control of the strings or depth of the tone. I don't even know how to put it, but you're the first like female artist that I've heard that plays like a guy, I think is the way I think of that. But I could be completely wrong. Like my intuition about what that is could be wrong, but you get more of a resonance out of the strings than it feels like I don't know what I'm talking about, but it feels like some people have a harsher touch and some people have a lighter touch. Am I anywhere near right about that?
Yeah, I mean, although, have you ever heard Jacqueline Dupre?
No. Should I?
Yes, definitely. She was probably my primary role model as a child. And she had this no holds barred, complete natural command of the instrument and strength and sensitivity. I mean, like the perfect kind of combination of that and passion. And so I was really, really attracted to that and attracted to her approach to the instrument and to her sound and to her to her instinct. There was something very raw about it. And so I think that's part of, kind of my own makeup with, let's just say my earliest sort of sound concept.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I feel pretty lucky because there is a kind of gender imbalance with the cello. There are a lot more famous male cellists than there are female cellists, and the female cellist that the cellist that I gravitated toward actually was, I mean, and I listened to many and I admired many, but the one that I really related to was female.
Okay.
And she played in such a way that I didn't think about her gender at all, not for a second. She wasn't a role model because she was a woman. She was a role model because I just adored the way that she played.
So let me give you what I think is an amazing compliment, and maybe I'm out of my mind. And for a lot of people listening, I'm going to put the music. By the way, your record company sent me the music, so I can I'll put it in right in here what I'm talking about. But
awesome.
Around 1:52 into the prelude of Suite 1, okay, it gets quick. It starts to speed up. And then after that, I cry when Ma plays it and you play it. and no one else.
Oh, thank you.
Why is that? Like, it pulls tears right out of me, and I don't know how to explain it, because I can listen to someone else play it and hear it and think, oh, that was done well, and it feels clinical to me. But my eyes fill with tears and they fall down my cheeks when you play it and when he plays it, and I don't know why that is, and I'm happy about it. Thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you for telling me.
Why does it happen? What is it like? So for people who don't understand the cello, there's a couple of functions about it that absolutely light me up. There's a way that the tones lift you and keep you up. And then there's a way that they lift you and drop you. And then there's a way I feel like I'm being pulled forward and let go and then pulled forward again. But I don't know how to quantify any of that.
But that's good. You shouldn't try to quantify it, because there's a very I think a person's response to listening to any music, not only the cello, though I'll get to that, to why the cello also always moved me and why I was so attracted to it. But there's something, even if you don't know anything about what you're listening to, you don't know the history, you don't know who the composer is, it doesn't matter. There is a very primal, very direct, and very emotional response that I think everybody has to music. Babies have it to music. I mean, I remember when my daughter is now 4.5, but let's say when she was like a newborn and I was traveling with her already, I mean, there were certain things I would sing to her that would, if she was fussy, would immediately calm her down. And you could feel the rhythm. You could feel her heart rate slow down. I mean, it's really within us, I think, as human beings, to really have a very direct and visceral response to music that we don't even have to spoken language. As for the cello, and of course, I mean, Yo-Yo Ma, that you've brought up before, has said this, that it's, and many others have said it, but the range of the cello and the timbre of the cello is the closest to the human voice of certainly any stringed instrument.
Okay. And
from the deepest sort of basso profundo voice into like this coloratura voice, and in every cello masterclass, you can hear the teacher saying, well, you have to imagine the voice, and how would a singer go for that, kind of go for that interval? How would the singer kind of go for that leap? And we cellists are always trying to mimic the human voice and how somebody would sing. And so I think that, I was 4 when I told my parents in no uncertain terms that I wanted to play the cello. And I mean, I can't tell you in any intellectual way why,
sure,
but that was, I think that was the emotional, primal, visceral reason why I wanted to play cello.
I only have one other like physical. So there are lower notes with the cello that I feel take the tension out of my spine up into my neck. It just, it relaxes me. Besides being physically touched in a sexual way, I have no other comparison for how like the cello can make me feel. Like seriously,
Yeah.
like I mean another person reaching out and touching your skin somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's very human, very very human.
I don't know how I found it, and you know what? It's funny. I try to trace it back in my mind because I like an eclectic mix of music. But as a younger person, I was growing up in the late 80s. Like we were all listening to Guns N' Roses and Metallica and stuff like that. Like, you know, there wasn't really
It's great stuff.
Yeah. Well, I still love it, but nobody was coming up to me and saying, hey, you should really listen to this. Other than I do wonder if Peter and the Wolf wasn't my first introduction to it.
It's a lot of people's first exposure to classical music. Peter and the Wolf is fantastic.
Right. I feel like really that may be it. But, and then after that, The West Wing, an episode of The West Wing where Yo-Yo Ma comes on and plays the cello.
Oh, that's right. He plays the first suite, right?
Yeah.
The first Bach suite?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't find another, but I can't remember. I'm 48 now. I can't remember it not being, it's my go-to music constantly. And I like it in other forms and fashions, but why is Bach, is there something technically about Bach that makes it, is that the ultimate piece to play or no?
Well, I mean, every composer that came after Bach was indirectly or directly influenced by what he did. Okay. He was a groundbreaker. He was in every way, in terms of, I mean, the polyphony that he created, the rhythmic, the rhythmic language. I mean, really pretty much everything you can think of. He also, I mean, like if let's say if we're speaking about the cello suites, we're talking a bit about the cello. The cello suites, of course, we know they were written 350 years ago or so, and yet they feel like they were written yesterday. There's a timelessness about Bach, which is, and a universality, and yet it's still, still some, high church. Some is literally church music, but this is not religious music. But right. This is intellectually, emotionally. It's the music that is, I think, it's the most satisfying and pleasurable to listen to.
Yeah, I always thought up until a couple of years ago that it was a technical thing that all people playing it were striving for, like trying to get it exactly, I mean, quote unquote, right. And until this latest Yo-Yo Ma album, where he kind of said, like, I'm gonna like lean into it in different places. I'd never heard anyone try to do that either, and now I'm excited for people to try that.
But this is his third recording of the Bach suites.
Yeah,
he recorded it in three different stages of his career, and that was in a way. That's my last album, actually. It was all the Bach suites.
Oh, and I've been listening to it for a while.
Sorry?
I've been listening to it for a while, yours.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was terrified to record them, actually. Even if you had told me that I was going to do it even 5 years ago, I would have said, oh, no way. I'm going to wait until I'm 60. Because I suppose Bach, for us musicians, is kind of, let's say the equivalent of what Shakespeare would be to actors. I mean, this is kind of, it's very, it's stuff that you feel like, okay, you need the experience, you need the life and the life experience and the wisdom to really do justice to it. And what I kind of realized, and I talked to Yo-Yo about this actually about a year ago, no, was it, 2 years ago or so, when I was making the decision to set down recording dates and recording times as well. And he said, and he gave me really, really amazing advice, actually. I've known him for a long time. And it was more or less something which I was kind of wrestling with, but which he kind of reaffirmed, which is that Bach, it's living music. And I finally had the courage to put them down onto takes when I realized, okay, this is how I am thinking about this right now. I was 37, and I was in a certain stage of my life, and I had lived with the suites for my whole life basically. And in 15 years, I might record them again, and they might be very different, and that's great because Bach is truly living music, and it's something that evolves in one's mind, in one's heart, and everything else. And so that's how I kind of got the courage to do it.
You're creating something from no recordings.
Yeah.
And when you think back to when they were made, it's not like,
Mhm.
listen, it's not like he was scoring a movie when he made those
No.
things. Those
No, no.
sounds, they came through a pencil from his head, I would
That's right.
imagine.
Mhm.
It's really stunning.
Mhm.
Okay, I should ask you a diabetes question to keep people up. Or this is just going to turn
Your listeners are going to be like, is this a diabetes podcast?
Did Scott just get this girl on and ask her about the cello and forget about the diabetes stuff? So I'm hoping people listening will be drawn to try your album. Like I really
Thank
do.
you. Thank you. That would be great.
I'm just thrilled that I found it, honestly. So when you're diagnosed, is it pens? Do you get pens or do you just get insulin in a vial?
No.
Or is it R
It was
still?
injections. It was syringes with NPH and regular.
And regular, right. How long did you do that for?
Yeah.
Do you remember how long you did that before you went to a faster acting insulin?
Yes. It was about, before Humalog, it was maybe 3 years.
Okay.
And that was a revelation that I didn't have to take my my shot, half an hour to 45 minutes before I ate a meal. And so much less planning, thank God, it was involved. And so then I switched to, I remember I switched to Ultra Lente and Lente. And then then there were the pens. And then when I was 16, so I'd had it for almost 7 years, I switched to a pump.
Wow.
Medtronic MiniMed.
Everyone started with that one, I think.
Yeah. I actually just got off it. I was very loyal until like 5 months ago. I switched to the Tandem.
Oh, are you using the Control IQ?
Not the Control IQ because I don't like the targets that it's set. I use the Basal IQ because it doesn't keep me between 110 and 160. I wanted to have better control than that. So
I hear people put it in sleep mode all the time to get tighter control.
Okay.
These are things I hear.
Okay.
My daughter uses the DIY loop, the open APS one.
Oh.
So like she's getting like auto boluses when her blood sugar goes up and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's very
all right.
cool.
Well, I might have to pick your brain about that.
Okay. So you're using a Dexcom G6?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a big leap from how you started.
That was huge. That was probably the biggest difference because during my pregnancy, which was in 2015 and 2016, I was on the G5.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't it was great, but it was not as accurate. There was still, a lot of finger sticking. So yeah, now it's kind of a new life. And even now without, of course, I work hard to keep my blood sugar under control, but I know I could get it better, but it's easy to hit like 6 now.
Mm-hmm.
Or easier to hit 6 now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
So,
no, I completely agree. I think the people who listen to this podcast would agree with you as well. So this show is mainly about like how to use insulin. And so most of the people who listen to the show probably have A1Cs that are closer to 6 if they've been listening for more than a couple of months.
fantastic.
Really
fantastic.
cool.
Okay.
And I'm really proud of, but I'm wondering.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So I'm thinking back to middle school where they brought us all in the cafeteria and brought all the instruments in the world in front of us. And I was like, I'm going to go get that cello. And then I moved. By the way, it would not have worked out. I know I couldn't have done it. I'm a little like, I can listen to it. I can appreciate it. I don't think I could have created it. But anyway, I'm moving towards the cello and this girl steps in front of me and takes the last one. And I end up with a saxophone in my hand. And I'm like, this isn't what I wanted to do.
That's not the same. Not the same.
So anyway, I don't play an instrument. And I hope that girl still does, whoever she is. I hope
she does too.
I hope she took it and did some really great stuff with it.
Yeah.
But if I would have found it and had diabetes, what's that like? I think it must have that Yo-Yo Ma concert I went to must have been 3.5 hours long or more, and he didn't get up or move or walk away.
Yep.
So how do you do that with diabetes?
Well, I'm very proud to say I've never had a single low on stage. In the entire 28 years that I've had it, I've always managed it. And even way before the technology was there to where it's much easier to avoid a low now than it was certainly in the 90s or the early aughts. Before the CGM, I would test my blood sugar. I always tested quite a lot. I've been luckily most of the time that I've had diabetes, I've had very tight control. But in the hour before a concert, I would test my blood sugar at least maybe 6 times. So an hour before, 45 minutes before, half an hour before, 15 minutes before, and then like twice more to make sure that I was never below 130 before I went on stage. Like between 130 to 150 is kind of my sweet spot. That, just, a reasonable number. I mean, not like an ideal number, but a place where I had a kind of threshold to drop, because just the kind of the physical effort of playing and kind of the concentration required would always make me drop a little bit.
Okay.
And so for a Bach marathon, I would the way I structured those concerts, which were 3.5 hours long, I would do the first 3 suites. The 3 out of 6 suites, right? So the first 3 suites are about 65, 70 minutes, and so I would make sure I was about around 140, and then there would be a 15-minute intermission at the 70-minute mark, and then where I would just make sure that I was, I would keep some protein and maybe a few grapes backstage.
Right. So a little slow acting and a little fast acting.
Exactly.
Carbs,
exactly.
right?
And of course, having glucose tablets around, in case I walked off stage at like 65 or something.
Right.
Which almost has never happened, actually. I mean, I was like 110 or so when I walked off stage after that, and then I would just I would take, like, I don't know, 4 grapes or something, and I would get myself back up to 130.
What's adrenaline like while you're playing? Is it something you control, like a baseball player trying to hit a baseball? It's there and you have to quell it, or are you kind of zen when you play at this point?
The adrenaline, I mean, I'm very grateful that I have it, and that it's not something that gets in my way. I've always, I feel, people have asked me, do you get nervous? And I always say no, because I mean, I feel the butterflies, but it's a kind of positive rush. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I find it that it really focuses me. So I've never had a kind of adrenaline high from a concert. Okay. Where I've had adrenaline highs was when I was really nervous about something else. Like, for example, my husband had to have an eye surgery, and my blood sugar shot to 320 and would not come down. Even I was like pumping and pumping and pumping, and the corrections were like water. Yeah. They didn't do anything until he was out of the OR, and I knew he was fine. And then my blood sugar plunged.
Yeah, then you had to eat. You had pre-bolus for 2 meals.
Exactly. So I mean, the liver was just going. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, what's the biggest collection of people you've played in front of ever? Do you know?
I think it was 80,000. I played a concert in a park.
Wow.
So like a pop concert, but I mean that's unusual for a classical concert. I mean, one of the most enjoyable experiences I had actually was doing the Bach marathon at the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, which it's a Toyota hall. The same acoustician who did the Disney Hall in LA, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And what they did with the lighting was incredibly special. Like, there was a spot around the piano bench, because of course in a Bach marathon, a solo Bach marathon, it's just me on the stage, and there's and it's and so I mean, to do that kind of in a huge hall, if the lights are fully on, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Yeah. And so they were able to create a kind of intimacy where I was very aware of the people around me, but yet I felt like I was kind of in a room with them, like having a direct conversation the way we are now. And I just felt like I was playing kind of on a mountain under the stars.
That sounds nice.
And that was for, I think, 2,200 people. It is a capacity hall. So that was really, really enjoyable.
So I learned something about people at Carnegie Hall once, and I wonder if you agree with this or don't.
Sure.
I noticed that when people are told to be quiet, they can't be. And when they don't need to be quiet, they have no trouble with it whatsoever. Yep. And it's always throat clearing.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
And then the gum the cough drop pepper is like
right. Yeah. Right. It's so I've seen Yo-Yo Ma a number of times, but one of the times was at Carnegie Hall, and he finished playing and there was a break. I think we were seeing the Goat Road stuff, maybe.
The Goat Rodeo.
Yeah, the Goat Rodeo stuff. And during the break, the place is silent. Everybody's sitting around sort of like, like they're in church and being quiet and everything. And then the lights dim a little and they start to play and that's it. It just happens everywhere. And I'm like, God, this is like the most interesting psychological look into people's minds. Like as soon as they thought, oh, I have to be quiet, they couldn't be. So I'm not wrong about that, right?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
Well, it's like children. I mean, like, as I said, I've I have a 4-year-old. I mean, and if I tell her she has to be quiet, she's like, and if not, and if I totally leave her alone, she's like sitting quietly, reading a book or doing a puzzle or something like that. It's totally fine.
I so have always wondered what that is because that's the first time I noticed it, and now I notice it everywhere.
I think we're just very contrarian beings, honestly.
It's fascinating. I just find it really fascinating.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's right.
I love it. I'm like, now? It's now? Yeah, okay.
Well, I think you raise an interesting point. I think it's also people are generally uncomfortable with silence, particularly in New York, by the way, where there's just no silence at any time.
Right.
And so you find very often if there's a pause, like for example, I don't know if you're familiar with Shostakovich's First Cello Concerto. I know I have it. It's in my giant group of cello music, but I don't know if I could recall it right now. Sure. There's the third movement is a cadenza, which means that the cello is playing entirely alone for about 7 minutes, and then of course the orchestra comes in for the last movement, and there are these really, really quiet moments and moments of silence and pauses that are written in the music. And I remember once I was playing it in New York where it was the rhythmic pauses, and it was literally I would be like blank and then blank. And so there was no silence at all, and so and there was this guy who was, I think he was having kind of a problem, but I mean he didn't have the problem when the music was actually loud enough to kind of cover it up, and it was I mean it was hard not to kind of break character, as it were.
Yeah. Everybody needs to look deep into their soul about why they open up their phone when the movie starts and weren't looking at it during the previews. Yeah.
I think there is a kind of anxiety about being in a quiet spot.
It must be. I need it around the cello specifically. I need the quiet because I don't know how to explain this to people. I'm not listening to it. I'm trying to absorb it. And I don't know another way to say that, really. So
no, that's fair. That's totally fair.
I need to be in I think the best thing that could happen to me is a deprivation tank with the cello. I think that I would really like.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that might not be great, right? Hey, are instruments, like, I'm assuming they're all different, but can you pick one up, play it, pick up another one and play it? It's not the same? Like, I'm sure you have one that you use, but...
You mean the cello itself?
Yeah,
You're not talking about another type of instrument. Yeah, I mean, I could pick up any cello and play it, yes, but no, I mean, my cello is a very wonderful, rare Italian instrument, which I'm lucky to have. So
how do you? How would a person categorize you? Like, like if you were a football player, are you like an all-star, or are you like do you know what I mean? Like how does somebody who's as good at this as you are, like how many people in the world even do this, I guess, in a notable way?
Well, there are not that many professional classical musicians. It's a kind of specialized, it's definitely, it's a kind of, it's a limited audience. We are always trying to expand our audience, but let's face it, they're not everybody's listening to classical music every day. As much as I would like them to. I think it's the greatest music there is, but we're all trying to struggle to get that message out. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, it's like dancers or athletes. I mean, as you were saying, I mean, it's a huge amount of discipline and hard work and blood, sweat, and tears in training, which, not everyone wants to spend their time doing. And so there are not that many people who go into it professionally.
Right. That brings me to the question of how long did it take you, like, whatever proficiency you feel like you're at now, how long does that take to accomplish?
Oh, I mean, I feel like it's a lifelong thing. I mean, I still feel like a student, in many ways. I mean, certain things certainly get easier, and I I hopefully feel like my understanding of certain music, which I keep returning to, deepens over time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like, well, I mean, I used to do this very naturally, and now I don't feel like it's so natural anymore. Therefore, maybe I should put it away for a while and then come back to it later. It's that kind of thing. I mean, it's ongoing. It's an ongoing kind of evolution.
I can't. So you said you wanted to do it when you were 4.
Yeah.
Were people looking at you like when you were 6, going, "Hey, wow, she's way better at this than the other 6-year-olds? Like way better at this than the 8-year-olds and 9? Like, did your parents tell me the story that your parents tell everybody when they're like, "Oh, we know." Like, when was that?
I can't tell you that.
No, you don't know, or you don't want to say.
You have to ask my parents.
Okay, all right.
That's not fair.
Did they come from like some musical background?
Yeah, actually, my parents are fantastic professional musicians. My father was the first violinist of the Cleveland Quartet for 20 years, and I mean from 1969 till 1989. So he left when I was 7.
Wow.
And my mother's a fantastic pianist, and but they were, so many people ask, well, oh, so therefore you had to do music,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually the opposite is true. They were very hands off about that. I never felt in any way any pressure coming from them as far as becoming a musician went. I mean, they were kind of hippie parents. They were like, oh, well, follow your heart. And,
right. Well, I'm really glad that your heart didn't
makes you happy.
lead you to like accounting or something like that.
Well, if it had been that, they would have been supportive of it. So which is
just telling you, I would be upset. I'm sure you all would be happy. But my life wouldn't be as good. So I'm thrilled. I mean, I can't imagine that, that it's not, I mean, I'm sure it's not a terrible living, but it's also not crazy. There's like money falling out of the ceiling or stuff like that. So it's a passion, right?
No, I mean, as I said, it's not a mass marketed product. So no, I mean, we're not making pop star money. If that's the question.
Yeah, no kidding. So, well, you should be. Let me say that before I move on. You really should be. You're doing something that just so few people know how to do in a way that evokes. Just people would love it if they listened. I know it doesn't strike some people immediately, and there's no words, so they can't learn it quickly enough to stick with it.
It requires, it requires you to sit down and, as you were saying, absorb it, because it's a long form.
Yeah.
It can't be wrapped up in 3 minutes. It requires more from the listener than other types.
Yeah. It's, there may have been years where I listened to certain pieces before I went to bed every night. And it just, it's how you, so for people listening, like, if we just pick some random like ditty that you can like, it's on the radio and you can just, it sticks in your head right away.
Oh yeah.
It's like sound crack. It's just like right away but
absolutely.
It happens with classical music too. If you have to hear it more often.
You give it a chance.
Yeah. It really does. Yeah. You said you had a 4-year-old child. Is that right?
I do. Yeah.
I wonder how much thought goes into having a baby when you have diabetes. What did you think about before you did that?
A lot. And I read a lot of books and spoke with a lot of doctors and did plenty of freaking out and everything else. Mm-hmm. Yes. It also, I realized I had to be selective with whom with whom I chose to talk about it. Just because a lot of people had kind of outdated concepts of what it meant to be diabetic and pregnant at the same time. Right.
Those are not fun conversations to have with people who think they understand this whole thing and just naysay and like you got it early on, like, don't forget the cello,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, you don't have to forget anything. And it's, especially with this technology, I mean, honestly,
exactly.
It's a big jump.
It's a very different story. And even before, I mean, like even, 5 years ago when I was pregnant, it was an earlier generation of the Dexcom, and I didn't have a smart pump, but I mean, I achieved between 5.8 and 6.2 A1Cs, and my baby was born completely healthy. And I was, I had a great pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work, of course. And, very restricted diet. I've always found for myself that low carb
Works well.
generally works much better for me than I mean, I just my body just doesn't process carbohydrates well. I'm not one of the lucky ones with that. And so I found having a not quite ketogenic, but let's say very heavy on protein and fat diet has always worked better for me.
I have an episode going out in a couple of days. Paul Saladino, he's a doctor who has a podcast about eating carnivore. I just recorded with him because on the show we do a lot of different things, but excuse me. One of them was we're doing like a how you eat kind of series because people eat in so many varied ways. I will tell you that at the core of this podcast, here's what happened is my daughter was diagnosed when she was 2 and I was a stay-at-home dad. Okay. And for the first couple of years, I was so bad at it. And her A1C was always like almost 9 and I didn't know what I was doing. You know, she had a seizure when she was little. It was a bit of a mess.
Hard.
Yeah. And so I wrote for years about it. I had a really popular blog and I wrote for years on it. And one day I said to my wife, like after I had her A1C was dialed in and it was just easy. Like I could just do it, you know. I said to my wife, I'm like, there's a system in here, like inside of these ideas, you know. So I put them together and I wrote about them for a while. And then one day, almost 7 years ago, I started this podcast. And I started telling people, like I started putting diabetes into like easy to understand ideas, right? Yeah. And my goal was always, I don't care how you eat. If you understand how to use insulin, you could have an A1C like this as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's been my whole goal. And now I'm trying to have people in who talk about the way they eat, whether you're high protein or you're I don't know, you're a vegetarian. I don't care.
Yeah. There are many ways to do it. Many ways to do it. Right. But I found for me that for myself that let's say ketogenic light diet works best for me.
Yeah, I don't have diabetes, but if I have too much sugar or flour, I will start retaining water like a pregnant lady. Yeah.
And nobody wants that.
I've seen myself both ways. This is a better way. But no, seriously, like I could eat what most people would consider to be a very reasonable set of meals for a week and be 10 pounds heavier at the end of the week. And it's all just water weight.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, for most people, most people should lay off the flour and sugar. I mean, it's an unfortunate fact of life, but it's true.
Right. Which is terrible because a cookie is nice, but, and I don't care what people say. I don't want a cookie made out of almond flour. You can keep that.
Yeah,
What am I doing with it? What am I going to do with that?
And I've always found like if I have, I will have a cheat meal once every 10 days. That's something I need to do for myself. I mean, not during pregnancy, but during, normal times. Yeah. And my vice are actually pancakes.
It's a good one.
Buttermilk, gooey,
syrup, butter.
Pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Butter, brown maple syrup, the works.
Yeah.
And I find that having that once every 10 days is far more interesting and better and more satisfying and makes me eat better the rest of the time than having these kind of diet pancakes, or keto pancakes, which just taste like cardboard to me. So, I prefer to have the real deal once and then, be really strict the rest of the time.
No, it's all doable. Like, so my daughter's 16 now. And her A1C has been between 5.2 and 6.2 for 6.5 years, maybe, I think.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And she eats whatever she wants. Like she had graham crackers and some weird Cool Whip with pumpkin this afternoon. It's just, I just know how to bolus, Alyssa. If you had me with you, I could take care of those pancakes for you if you need me to.
Fantastic.
Well, pre-bolus, we'll make a little temp basil increase. We'll do a couple of different things in there.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it down.
Smooth it right over.
You got it
down. So when I was getting this set up, someone said that you were hoping to get a little more involved with diabetes stuff. Is that something you're thinking of doing?
Yeah, actually. Oh, I'm an official spokesperson for JDRF.
Oh, cool.
And also, I'm also an official kind of spokesperson / consultant for eGenesis, which is they research not only type 1 diabetes, but they're basically cloning organs. And so they're in a very specific angle for curing diabetes for research. And so I'm working with, and we're kind of now no pun intended, but we're kind of working in tandem together with JDRF and eGenesis with the tandem pump. I'm getting much louder about my advocacy.
Did you ever, as a child or a younger person, did you ever hide it? the diabetes?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. A lot, actually. I started playing professionally when I was 14. So I signed with the management, and I wasn't doing that much. I was maybe 1 week per month. I would be doing like a concerto with orchestra, maybe a couple of recitals here and there. But especially because I was so young, and it was a new management, and they didn't. And this was still in the mid-90s, so the preconceptions of diabetes, they were definitely changing by that point, but they are not what they are now, for sure. And so I remember speaking to my parents about it and saying, I'm not going to tell any professional contact about this. So I did hide it. I kept it hidden from everyone who was really not, let's say, a close family friend or a very sort of trusted person. And so I kept it a secret from my manager for 3 years.
Wow.
Until just because, I mean, I was very driven, and I was quite ambitious, and I didn't want anyone to treat me with kid gloves from any sort of preconceived idea. And she actually found out because when I was 17, I started traveling by myself a bit, but I didn't stay in hotels, of course, at that age. I stayed with host families.
Okay.
And I remember I went up to a family in Maine. They were a wonderful family, and I stayed with them for about 5 days. And they, there was a girl about my age who was living there, and she had type 1. And then, of course, we compared notes all the time. And so my manager found out this way, and they said, "Oh, yes, and both of them have type 1. How not how wonderful, but how crazy."
Yeah.
And then my manager, who was very New York style, tough, but actually very warm and fuzzy on the inside, she said, "I didn't know you're diabetic. Why didn't you tell me?"
Did you tell her why, or did you just play it off and keep going?
No, she.
You broke up. Hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't worry.
Can you hear me?
I can, but we got a bad. I'll cut my video out and see if that helps us a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she said, "Are you really diabetic?" And I said, "Yeah." And then she said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And I said, "I don't know, just because."
Because I didn't need you.
I mean, like, why would I tell you? I mean, it's irrelevant. And then she said, "Sorry."
I was going to say, was it freeing to tell somebody?
It was definitely liberating to tell her and realize that I didn't have to hide it anymore. Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely so. Definitely.
I can understand why you did it. And a lot of people do. And it makes sense to me. You don't want somebody to limit you or, like you said, make a decision that, you definitely can't do this before you get a chance to.
Exactly.
There's a lot of good reasons.
I didn't want anyone even to have an unconscious bias. That was really impossible. And I mean, even a bit later, I remember when I would want to do sort of athletic things, where, and I wouldn't say I was, fully out with it. I mean, I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops, so people knew, and they would say, "Well, are you sure that you want to do that? Like, did you eat enough before, or you're not going to, get low or something, or pass out, are you?" The sort of insensitive things like that.
Yeah. Then all the questions start and all the judgments and the side eye and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, all right, I don't think I'm going to talk about this anymore. But then there's the other side of it as well, which is that, I always forget that you have it because, you handle it so well. It's so easy for you. And that's also not, I prefer that perhaps to the other, but it's that's also a bit,
yeah, we have
not ideal either. Let's just put it that way.
I have an episode about how a layperson can understand diabetes, and it's just sort of an explanation of it. And it's a very common thing is that most things that people think to say that they believe are comforting aren't really. When they come from the outside, they just don't recognize it. I do think they're trying to be kind about it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's I don't judge anyone for making a comment this way, and especially when it's meant as a kind of encouragement. It's just, it's a tough one. Yeah. You learn to have I'm sure your daughter can relate to this too. I mean, one learns to have a pretty thick skin.
Yeah. No, I believe so. I think even parents, I'm going to try my video again. I think even parents
Yeah.
and anybody, loved ones, it's hard to hear someone say something that burns in your chest and you have to be like, oh, well, let me explain it to you. It's not like that. Or you have to decide, I'm not going to explain this to them. I'm just going to walk away and let it be.
You, you don't owe anyone an explanation.
Yeah.
It's just, well, I'm doing what I'm doing and that's it. And, I live with it and that's all it is.
Okay. What kind of music do you listen? So do you, for enjoyment, do you listen to music or is it like,
Yeah.
What do you listen to?
I do. I would say actually 85-90% of the time I'm listening to classical music because I really love it. And it's, it's what moves me. It's what I really truly love. As for other types of music, which I also love very much. I mean, I went through a Queen phase recently. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I listened to Queen growing up, but I
found it again.
I still love it.
Yeah,
Freddie Mercury is one of my heroes.
right.
Bjork, I loved as a teenager, and then kind of I went a little cold on it, and now I adore her
Finding
again.
it again.
I think she's amazing.
Interesting.
And the Beatles, of course, too, and
I jumped through stuff too. I have to tell you that one of the things I listen to more than I am comfortable telling people, but Sarah Bareilles, I listen to a lot, and I don't know why I'm laughing. She's got such a wonderful voice, and and I love how she writes, and I don't. Again, people listening are going to learn a lot about me today, but I do. I go the other way. I'm kind of all over the place. I've been listening to a lot of more. A little more jazzy stuff once in a while. And Gary Clark Jr., I really love how he plays the guitar. It's a interesting mix of Southern and not Southern. I don't know how to
check it out. I've never heard it.
He's a little more like Jimi Hendrix than anything else.
Love
He's
Hendrix.
so good, But yeah, and I also do this thing where I'm very careful to, and I'm glad about Apple Music lets me follow my kids and what they're listening to.
That's very cool.
And I like my kids a lot. I think they're decent people. And so when they're listening to things that I don't get, I try really hard.
That's good of you.
Right,
That's
to
very
do
good
it.
of you.
So I do know Pop Smoke, in case you're wondering. I'm sure that rap might have missed you. But I'm trying to, I've learned to like Meek Mill. And it's just my son listens to a lot of rap music. And he's
great.
Bright kid. And I'm like, you know what? There must be something in here. So I talked to him about it.
Well, good for you for being open-minded. That's great.
Plus, I don't want to be an old person one day who's like, what's that you're listening to? I don't like it. I don't want to sound like that ever.
That out of touch.
Who's coming up in cello that I should be paying attention to?
Well, you mentioned the royal wedding. I mean, you heard Shekukana Mason, who is wonderful and a super sweet guy, and you definitely keep an eye out for him.
Okay, I keep messaging him privately, and he will not answer me back. I'm sure I must come on. I'm like, please come on my podcast, and he won't. And but he won't even answer me. It's fine. He seems busy. It's okay. No, but I wonder too if people don't sometimes want to mix their professional with their diabetes too, which makes sense to me.
I mean, he's very young. And I think he's publicly type 1 diabetic. I mean, he's not hiding it, but people go through different stages with how much they want to talk about it, and it could be that.
Makes sense to me. He and his family did something, like his sisters, and maybe I can't. It's all of his siblings. He did something on Facebook recently, and I was like, "This is as good as a concert I've ever been to." Like they were like pulling it off in their family room. It looked like I was really something. Have you tried that whole thing since COVID? Have you been like, "Hey, I'm going to play on my Instagram"?
Actually, yeah. In fact, right when we were truly in lockdown, I did a project called 36 Days of Bach. So it actually went from March 17th until April 21st. That was 36 days. And because there are 36 movements of Bach written for cello. So 6 suites, six movements each. And I posted one movement per day, and I went through all 6 suites. And at the end of each suite, I would do a live Facebook session, actually.
Cool.
But it was posted on all of my social media channels.
People can find it still then.
And that was especially kind of when it when the reality hit that we were not going to be congregating in any concert hall anytime soon.
Yeah.
It was, as performers, we are trained, and what we want to do is just to give. We want to share. We want to communicate in that way. And so that was my way of doing that, of sharing.
Well, I'll make sure to put links to your social media in here so people can find it. But you are playing in public just in Europe, right?
Yes, I did. I did kind of 3 solid weeks of work in Europe. Just now, actually, it's like September, October, because things are happening in Germany and in Switzerland, and to a certain, very, very modest extent in the UK. There, kind of recorded streams, kind of the way they are here in the US.
Right.
But I did, I kind of had this burst of activity. I had maybe, let's see how many, like 10 concerts in the space of about 3 weeks. So that, for audiences, that was a big deal.
And this gap of time this year is going to cause gaps in the future that we don't realize yet. People not performing and honing their crafts and getting better. You think about like bands that have to go out and just bar tour to get good enough that somebody will pay attention. None of that's happening right now.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's
no
a
kidding.
really, really difficult time.
I appreciate that you did that and you wanted to keep going and just try to find some. I think everybody fees that way to some degree.
And actually, I've been doing quite a lot of recording. I mean, as soon as I arrived back in San Diego, kind of mid-October, and recorded all 5 Beethoven sonatas right away at the Conrad Previs Center, which is a glorious chamber music hall. It's just, the acoustics are unbelievable. Like, I mean, once this is all over, you've got to go and listen to some concerts there.
I would.
It's really pretty amazing.
Do you, I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off. Do you have a recording of Vivaldi? I find that to be the most joyous of the cello.
I don't.
No,
unfortunately, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
One day.
Look at you apologizing to me. Don't apologize. I was just that to me seems the closest to like the holidays. I don't know what that.
Oh yeah.
Is that right?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know what, I'm literally a neophyte. I don't know anything about it. I can't be technical or specific. I can just tell you
that's great.
It's the greatest thing ever. So,
but this is what, there's no need for that. I mean, I'm thrilled that you love it. It's making my day. It's just great.
I'm glad. What is there any modern music that fits cello? Like, are people still writing for it now? Stuff that I don't know about?
Oh yeah. No, for sure. There's, and actually it's a very special time, I think, for contemporary classical composers, because it used to be that there was kind of certain styles that were acceptable, quote unquote, to write in. You weren't taken seriously if you wrote something that was too easy on the ears, too accessible. Whereas now, I mean, kind of anything goes. And that means that there are a bunch of different languages that people are writing in. Some are writing in very kind of tonal way, that kind of looking to the past, like pretty melodies and things like this. And others are writing in totally atonal way, very dissonant, very kind of complicated rhythmically. And I mean, I think it's all really, and others are kind of relying on technology, on electronics, special effects, and it's all super, super interesting. And so, no, I feel lucky because I have a lot of relationships with several contemporary composers, and they're all very, very different from one another. And so, that's something.
So I have a lot more to find. Can I ask a question, like a real nuts and bolts question that I've never quite been able to make sense of in my head? The bow is nothing more than horsehair?
Oh, it's a wooden stick with horsehair, and then the frog is, well, I mean, some of the older bows were made with an endangered tortoiseshell. Unfortunately, I mean, bows are not made that way anymore, and actually haven't been for quite some time. But and then there's some metal to tighten the hair.
But then why can you pick up one bow and another bow and make the same sound with it?
Well, they're not exactly the same.
They're not?
No.
So do you hear the difference in the bow and then change?
I mean, I have 2 bows. There's one bow that I really play with, and one bow that I have as kind of an extra in case my bow needs to have a kind of serious repair, or I don't know, something bad happens to it, basically.
No kidding. See, that makes more sense to me, because if you've ever watched someone, like, I don't know what the terminology is, but the bow gets rolled while it's making notes, and you're more on the side of it, you're more in the center of it, and I just thought, like, how can it be the same for everyone? So you have
it's absolutely, that's a very good question. It's absolutely not the same.
Right.
And bows are all over the place in terms of the weight is always slightly different. And even the type of horsehair that some people prefer can be different.
How do you choose one? Is it like Harry Potter?
A little bit.
It just finds you. Or?
I love those broomstick scenes or the ones, it's like choosing an instrument. It's very true.
No kidding. So wow, that's really, listen, I don't know how else to tell you that I think what you do is really genuinely amazing. And it feels magical to me. It really does. I hope people, I'm going to try to put enough of your music in this episode that people will want to go find the album and listen through it.
Oh, awesome. That'd be amazing.
I really want them to. It just, my life would not be the same if people didn't write music for the cello.
That certainly wouldn't be.
I like it fine mixed with their stuff, but it doesn't get, when it gets pulled out in front is when I, like, what's that, there's a thing that Yo-Yo Ma put out recently. There's a track, it's called Waltz Whitman. Do you know that?
I haven't heard that actually. I'm gonna have to listen to it.
But the violin is just kind of it feels very American to me.
Yeah.
Almost like folk music.
Oh yeah, no, he puts out a lot of that.
Yeah, but the violin, I can't think of the guy's name. This is so insulting. Edgar
Meyer is the bass player.
It is the bass player, and he's in there. And then there's a violinist,
Mark
and
Connor,
maybe, and I can look. Hold on a second. And the violin takes over, and I love it. And at the same time, like, could you shut up so I can hear the cello? And
I love it.
So hold on a second. I'm going to find it for you, and then I'll let you out of here. I know you have a life you have to live. And I do want to tell you a story. So we were supposed to record the other day, and it didn't go well. We just got time zone messed up. Like you said, you're the people who were helping you get this set up believed you to be in Europe.
I'm so sorry about that.
No. While you were in, I want to tell you the rest of it because the rest of it is hilarious. Stuart Duncan, Edgar Meyer, and Chris Thiel.
Chris Thiele. Oh, yeah.
Thiele. Okay. Anyway, it's I love that. It's a short piece and I really love it. But anyway, so the night before I was going to record with you, I'll end with this. My computer, the one I'm using right now, the one that has 63 recorded but not released episodes of this podcast on it, just shut off and wouldn't turn back on again.
Jesus.
So I spent the entire night, I literally found the courage to erase it and put it back on from a backup, which was, trust me, I was like, my wife's like, you look like you were going to throw up. And I said it. And so I re-backed it up. I got this computer online 5 minutes before you and I were supposed to record at 8:00 in the morning Eastern time. And I was like, I did it. And then you weren't there. And I was relieved. I have to be honest with you. I was relieved. But,
okay. All right. It worked out for the best. I'm
100% did. But so I woke up at 7 a.m. to the backup just about being done. And I started getting nervous and I put your music on and it calmed me down. And so I just stayed chill and I waited for it to happen. And then it all worked out for the better because I was probably exhausted. It probably wouldn't have been as much fun as I hope this was.
No, this was great.
I really appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.
A ton. I don't know. It just means the world to me. Just a huge thank you to Alisa Weilerstein for coming on the show and talking about the cello and type 1 diabetes. I just had the greatest time. You really should check her music out at alisaweilerstein.com. ALISAWEILERSTEIN.com. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to her website as well as Alisa's social media. I'd like to thank Alisa's record label, Pentatone, for allowing me to use cuts from her latest album, Bach Cello Suites, here in the podcast. For those of you who don't love the cello as much as I do, I want to implore you to just try the cello suites. Take a few hours and just absorb it. It's absolutely life-affirming and life-changing, and Alisa does as good a job with it as anyone I've ever heard. I'll leave you now with Alisa's version of the Prelude from Suite 1. Please go find her on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere you listen to music. Weilerstein Bach, you won't be sorry. And if anybody's listening who knows Sheku Kane Mason, please tell him I'd love for him to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you soon.